In this quick video, I'm going to be giving an introduction to selling options, both cash secured puts and also covered calls, though this is most likely gonna mainly focus on covered calls. Just to give a quick insight, been investing for about 10 years now, been doing options for about 7 or 8 years. And in terms of selling options, it's rather new for me. I've always been an option buyer because I like having kind of outweighed upside. But option selling can be a really, really great way to make additional income. And that's recently what I've started getting into. And one thing I will say, a lot of people talk about this. One thing you have to understand is when you sell options, you have to be very, very careful. Um, when you buy options, typically your max loss is going to be whatever the premium is, right? So if it's a dollar premium, you can maybe lose $100 per contract. When you sell options, you're the one writing the contract, so you can theoretically lose unlimited money. As an example, say you sell a call on, let's make it up, Hut at $28. If Hut tomorrow goes to $100, I mean, you're gonna be like thousands of percent underwater. So the two types of option selling that I'm going to talk about in this video are going to be number one, covered calls. Covered calls mean that you're selling a call, but you're covering it with the existing assets. So as an example, we can look right here. Um, I have a lot of of Hut uh, Hut shares. So I have thousands, right? So um, I'm going to just kind of do something, right? I actually just earlier today sold some options, but that's when the volatility was higher and Hut was actually positive on the day. Now the premiums are going to be a little bit more ugly. So let's just kind of run through this, right? So first off, I'm in Charles Schwab. You can use pretty much any platform that allows this. I got calls. I always like to select kind of wide strikes because I like to see what the dynamic is. And just before we actually go into this, you have to understand what it means to sell a call. So when you're selling a call, you are selling, you're essentially giving somebody else the right to force you to sell your for every contract 100 shares of a particular stock. So as an example, let's say I wanted to do this for Hut at let's make it easy, $30, right? The premium right now is anywhere from 36 to 52. Let's just assume I go with the mid 44 cent, right? So this default is buy to open, right? But that's not what we're doing. So we're going to go to sell to open. What this means is that if on expiration day, September 5th, 2025, Hut is below $30 a share, I collect this 44 cent 44 cent premium, which translates to, because it's always times 100, translates to $44. The contract expires worthless. Whoever bought this contract from me, essentially, uh, they go to zero. Now, let's say Hut on this day, on the expiration day, on the expiration time, is at $31. I have a couple of options. If I choose to hold the contract and not sell it before, what will happen is I collect the premium. So let's assume I got in at 44 cents. I will collect that $44. But then I will be forced to sell 100 shares of Hut to that person. And it doesn't really matter who it is. It's all done. You don't have to be involved in that. It's all kind of just done automatically to the person who bought the contract for $30 a share. So in that case, I'm technically losing than if I didn't do anything, right? Because if I didn't do anything, my Hut shares would be worth 31 times 100, $3,100. And in this case, although they're worth $3,100, I'm being forced to sell them for $3,000, then I'm collecting a $44 premium. So the way I like to think about this stuff is I like to do two types of covered calls. Number one is when I kind of want to sell something, right? So I'm doing this for Apple. So Apple, I would like to sell ideally between $245 and $260 a share. So I'm selling covered calls on Apple. A few contracts. I don't have that many shares of Apple. It's an expensive stock. And if it goes between that 240 for various strike prices between 245 and 260. And if it lands at 247, maybe 100 shares would be sold. If it lands at something like that. So that's number one. I want to collect the premium, and I'm happy to sell. Number two is sometimes I'll do them on something so far fetched, like I did today. I think I bought the $31 ones for like I think it was 57 or 58 cents. It was a pretty nice premium. I think it's very unlikely that Hut in the next couple days will go from right now it's at 27. I think it was at like 27 and a half to $31, and I don't think it'll stay there. So I think it's very unlikely that that'll happen. So I don't really want it to hit. I want it to like go to 30, maybe 30 and a half, something really really close. But then I ultimately want it to kind of expire worthless, so I can just collect the premium and keep the shares and then sell the contracts next week. So we can kind of just run through this. I'm not going to actually go fully through it because I don't really want to buy these for this price. I have better. I bought better earlier today. But again, if I wanted to do this, it would be something as simple as I select the expiration date, and obviously if you go longer expiration dates, the premiums are going to be way way higher because there's again the the Greeks. And if you're not familiar with the Greeks, if you're not familiar with theta, time decay, and things like that, I 100% recommend you learn that before you start selling options. Because again, if you're not selling options correctly and you don't sell covered calls, meaning you don't own enough shares to offset or to cover the options that you're selling, you could legitimately get wrecked. I mean, you could blow up your entire account. You could go into debt. You could be in a really bad spot. So please, 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 before you start selling options, make sure that you understand at least the fundamentals of the Greeks and mainly time decay. Understand how volatility plays a role. Like the higher the volatility, the more expensive the premiums. That's just options 101. That's how it works. It's more expensive for the buyer, and it's more expensive for the. It's kind of better for the seller. More expensive meaning you're going to make more money. But again, higher volatility means higher likelihoods of things happening. So if you're not, just because you see, this is like a really really amazing premium, $345 for like again, I own thousand, I own in this account at least 1,500 shares, and then I also have some strategies open. So that's a lot of money, but what are the odds that Hut's over $30 come this date in November 21st, 2025? It's honestly kind of likely with the way this is being priced. So that's kind of how this how covered calls work. Now, let's jump over to cash secure puts. So, covered calls are a strategy where you're selling calls where you own 100 or more shares. Cash secured puts are kind of the inverse. They're when you're selling puts and you have enough cash to cover if you need to, if you get triggered. So, let's run through that. So, let's say I don't think Hut is going to. I think it's unlikely that Hut is going to go down to like $25 in the next 2 days. Again, these are pretty nice premiums considering where it's at right now. I mean, volatility was a little bit higher earlier today, but this is okay. So the way this works is always make sure you're selling to open and not buying to open if you're looking to sell and not to buy, and vice versa. The way this works is a cash secure put means I am selling the put. I am selling the right to. It's essentially you're taking the inverse of a short position, right? So as an example, if on September 5th, Hut is $25.05 come expiration day, this contract expires worthless. The person who bought the put, they go to zero, and you collect the entire premium. Now, if Hut on this date at the expiration time is below $25, let's say it's at $24, well, what happened is you collect the premium, and let's say we go with 48 cents. You would collect $48, but then you would be forced to buy 100 Hut shares, assuming you only bought one contract, for that $25. So again, in that case, you're kind of losing money because the delta between 25 and 24 is going to be $1, and you're really only making 48, whatever, 44, whatever it was, 50. Even if we go now, 50 cents in profit. But the way I think about cash secure puts is if I have cash and there are positions that I think are extremely unlikely to happen. Like as an example, the premium on this is not it's not great. These premiums are kind of like very very low. But let's say I just wanted to clip a little coupon, right? I think it's very unlikely that in 2 days HUD goes to $22, right? So I can make $10, which is not a lot of money, but if I wanted to, I could do 5, 10, 20, whatever contracts, assuming I have enough cash, and collect a little bit of money. I think it's very unlikely. And also, realistically, if HUD goes down to $22, I wouldn't be upset with owning the shares if it goes below. So it's almost like having a limit order, but potentially you make a little bit of money while doing it. So again, when selling puts, when selling calls, it's extremely important to make sure that if you're selling puts, you have the cash to cover. If you're selling calls, you have the shares to cover. Because again, the risk here is theoretically unlimited. And a lot of people make it sound like option selling is a get rich quick scheme, a way to guarantee income. It's none of those things. It's a way to make income, and it's a way to kind of add extra money coming into your brokerage account when you're holding shares or holding cash. But it's by no means risk free and guaranteed. So that's a little bit, and I'll be making more videos about this. But that's a quick intro to cash secure puts and covered calls. And I'll catch you all next time. Bye bye.